Thank you, Sheriff. You all may be seated. Members of the jury, while you were out, you admitted about 200 pieces of evidence. The record should reflect that pictures 46 through 220, inclusive with the exception of 64, 75, 76, 80, 99, 109, 113, and 114 are removed from all purposes. State's Exhibit 229 through 245 are removed for all purposes. Over your objections, Mr. Smith. State's Exhibits 282 and 283 are admitted for all purposes. Mr. Slash.
What about 230 through 233, Judge?
That will be included in 229 to 245 inclusive, sir. And they're admitted as well. Mr. Bassetti, your objections are noted. You have no objection.
Thanks, Judge.
You may proceed and ready. These are for record purposes of the
Okay.
Thank you.
Detective Whaley, did you find a fourth casing from fire cartridge casing rather, from the defendant's rifle?
We found a total of 4.
Okay. Were the first 3 marked when you got there?
Yes, sir.
And then you marked the 4th one?
Correct.
Did you conduct an inventory of the defendant's rifle?
We did.
Were you able to determine from that how many rounds were fired?
No, sir.
Okay. And why would that be?
He was unsure how many rounds he had in his rifle to begin with.
And did you take a variety of photographs out there that night?
I did.
Did you also collect fired cartridge casings from the defendant's rifle?
Yes.
Did you also collect 12 cartridge casings from the nursing home parking lot?
Yes.
And the magazine from the defendant's rifle, did you collect that?
We did.
Okay. And did you collect 1 live round from his rifle?
Yes.
And I believe I mentioned this, but did you also collect the defendant's rifle?
We did.
And 4 fired cartridge casings from Mr. Oliver's rifle?
Correct.
I'll show you a variety of exhibits that have already been admitted to evidence. And are these photographs that you took that night? And I'm taking Mr. Lewis so they can be published for the jury, and then you can tell the jury what those are. Judge, I believe these have already been admitted.
Yeah. You can publish
Yes,
it
sir.
every week. Sir, if at any point during his examination you want to, you can point and touch that screen and make marks if you need.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. This is State's Exhibit 46. What is that, Detective?
I believe that's the scene on Bishop Drive.
And what is depicted in that picture?
Well, we see a Box Springs squad car and some civilian vehicles.
Okay. Do you know the people that are pictured in that photograph?
No.
All right, State's Exhibit 47. You recognize that?
Yes, sir.
What's that?
Again, I believe that's going to be Barron Drive.
Barron or Bishop?
I'm not sure without a frame of reference here.
And State's Exhibit 48. Is that a photograph you took at the scene?
Yes, sir.
Where is that?
I believe that's going to be Barron.
State's Exhibit 49.
That's the vehicle that was fired into on Barron Drive.
The
vehicle?
or on Bishop Drive, sorry.
On Bishop. Okay. State's Exhibit 50.
We see the passenger side of that same vehicle.
51. That's the driver's side, actually.
I'm sorry, yes, driver's side.
Are those not on the screen to your left there?
They are. You see the driver's side, and we see both front and rear doors open. On the ground, beside the driver's door, there's a cell phone.
State's 52.
The same side of that vehicle, get a little bit into the interior.
53.
We see a closer up shot of the cell phone that was on the ground.
54.
Taking a shot of the houses to show the location, and show a better location where that car was located on the street.
And that's over on Bishop.
Correct.
55. What's the purpose of that photograph?
To get a close-up shot of the block number so we could see definitely where the car was located.
56.
We can see into the driver's side of the vehicle. We can see the rear of the vehicle.
58.
You can still see the rear, start to see the passenger side of the vehicle. You can see the one door is open.
59.
We see the better, clear image of the passenger side, see the front door is open.
60.
Start to see more of the interior of the vehicle from that front passenger door.
61.
Cell phone that was in the grass along the curb.
So that's why you took that photograph, to get that cell phone in there.
Correct.
62.
We see the passenger side more from kind of a front-facing angle. We can see the damage on the front passenger window with a definite hole.
Bullet hole
Yes,
in the front right passenger window, correct?
correct.
63.
It's actually 65. Or 62? Yes. What number is that, Mr. Lee?
62, Your Honor.
We see the front of the vehicle, see the front passenger window, and as well get a better image of the windshield.
63. 65, rather, excuse me.
Start to see more into the interior from the driver's side. You can see what appears to be blood on the center console and front passenger seat.
And that's that Fanta bottle that was testified to by one of the evidence.
Objection to leading, Your Honor?
Allow the objections over.
66.
We see the cell phone that was beside the driver's door.
67.
The interior of the vehicle from the driver's side.
68.
You see it into the back seat area from the driver's side of the vehicle. We also see a cell phone on the seat.
69.
That is the left side rear door.
70.
Again, the back seat, we see the cell phone.
Did you find any beer bottles, beer cans, any evidence of alcohol inside this car?
No, sir.
And you already testified you didn't find any firearms in there?
Correct.
And you canvassed the area of Barron and Shepherd as well as down to Bishop and didn't find any firearms on the ground or anything?
No, sir.
71.
See the trunk and the rear window of the vehicle.
72.
A better image of the trunk area.
What's that license plate number?
C. Charlie, S. Sam, 7, Y. Young, 882.
'73.
Give me the front passenger door of the vehicle.
What's that at the top of that picture?
The window.
74.
This is the front passenger seat. You can see blood, and there's a cell phone sitting on the seat.
77, I believe.
Closer image of the front seat and center console area.
78.
We get a better image of the center console area. You can see the blood.
79.
We can see a little bit more of the front console panel, as well as the center console.
81.
Documenting more of the center console area. You can see there's a amount of cash in the panel.
82.
Documenting the front passenger area, the glove box was open.
83.
Documenting the ignition position appears to be on.
84.
That's going to be the front passenger window of the front passenger door. You see the glass is cracked and a bullet hole in it.
85.
A closer image of that same hole.
86.
This is the same hole from the inside of the vehicle.
87.
Just a different angle of that same hole from the inside of the vehicle.
88.
You see the front windshield on the passenger side. It's cracked near the frame.
Indicating that a bullet had struck there.
Yes, sir.
90. Excuse me, 89.
A closer image of that same hole.
99.
See more of the windshield. You can see the crack on the left side, or I'm sorry, on the right side of the vehicle. And then you can also, on the left side of the vehicle, you can start to see some other cracks on that side as well.
91.
Just showing the front dash area to see if there was any other damage along that front dash.
92.
Again, documenting the dash area.
93.
There was some pulverized glass that was on the front dash.
94.
So that's looking across the front dash towards the driver's side. Seeing the left side from the inside of the vehicle, obviously, from looking at the left side of the front windshield.
95.
Just a different angle of the same image. You can see the cracks in the glass there, and there's a hole.
96.
Documenting the VIN number on the vehicle.
97.
Just documenting the console.
98.
That is the hole on the left side of the front windshield.
100,
Closer image of that hole on the front left side of the windshield.
101,
And that is another image of the hole that is on the front right side of the windshield.
102,
A closer image of that same hole in the last picture.
103,
And again, a closer image of that same picture, of the same hole.
What's the purpose of ruler there?
We'll call this like a one-to-one photo, so basically what that enables us to do, if we want to print this out, we can print it out at actual size.
And the next exhibit is 104, and these go through 220 for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
It's going to be the front passenger window with the hole, and we've now affixed the ruler to the hole.
105,
Closer image of that same hole.
106,
And get a closer image of that bullet hole.
107,
That's a hole that was found on the door frame between the front and rear doors on the passenger side of the vehicle.
108,
Closer image of that hole.
110,
This is showing the right side rear door. You can see towards the front, to the right side of the picture, you can see the hole that was on the door frame, and then above the door handle, we found another hole.
and that window there had been shattered out.
Correct.
$115,
That's going to be the hole on the right side rear door that was above the door handle.
I'll move through these real quickly. 116,
The right side rear,
117,
the right side rear view,
118,
of view from the right side of the vehicle.
119,
That's going to be a view from the left side of the vehicle looking at the right rear door.
120,
Closer image of that right rear door and the damage to the window.
121,
That was after we completed our inspection of the vehicle at the scene. We wrapped it with this special cellophane wrap, it's called crash wrap, to keep the vehicle and everything intact for our transfer.
127,
Documenting the telephone pole there. We often use those as reference points for our measurements.
is that the Ball Springs Rehabilitation Center in the
It
background?
is.
$128,
That's standing from that parking lot of the Ball Springs Rehabilitation Center and looking out towards Bishop. I'm sorry, Barron.
Barron. 132,
That's a view of the intersection there at Barron and Shepherd.
and that was from the nursing home.
Correct.
So looking back to the west.
I believe so, yes.
134,
I believe that's the area around Barron Drive. Barron and Shepherd.
136, 137, excuse me.
You see on the roadway, there's some marks some orange and white colored marks. Those are marking the shell, three of the shell casings that were on the roadway there at Barron and Shepherd.
What's the purpose of marking those casings?
To be able to view it from this angle, the shell casings aren't obvious taking a picture like here, so we set some marks down so that you can easily identify them so we can know where they are in the scene.
The bullet defects in the car that were in the back, those indicated direction of fire from behind the vehicle?
Objection to speculation and leading, Your Honor.
The objection is sustained and established. His ability to give that opinion, Mr. Senator.
138.
That's an orange marker that I placed on the ground in the grass there to depict the fourth shell casing that was found.
So is that up by Barron and Shepherd?
Yes, sir.
141.
Closer image of that shell casing in the grass.
144.
Showing those shell casings and their relationship to each other.
From the MC5 carbine rifle,
Correct.
shell casings for AR-223 rounds.
Correct.
149.
That is the car once we had it down in our Sally Port at Loose Air Justice Center.
They're in loose area.
Yes, sir.
153.
4200 Shepherd Lane, that's the Box Springs Rehabilitation Center.
Also known as the nursing home.
Correct.
155.
Image of the parking lot there at the nursing home.
There's a bunch of orange circles there. What are those?
Those were marked some shell casings that were found in the parking lot there.
40 millimeter and 9 millimeter shell
Correct.
casings?
40 caliber and 9 millimeter. Yes.
Okay. 40 caliber, 9 millimeter.
Correct.
158.
So that's standing in the parking lot of the nursing home. You see the intersection there at Bishop and, I'm sorry, Barron and Shepherd.
161.
You see another image of that, of Barron.
163.
I believe that's the house on the corner there at Barron.
Could that be 12304 Barron where the party was?
The block number is visible. Yes, it is.
It is?
Yes.
Okay. You see it there?
Yes.
All right. $170.
That's back in the parking lot of the nursing home.
What was the purpose of that photo?
We're just documenting the area, so we get a good idea of what's around there.
173.
That's one of the shell casings, the pistol shell casings that was found in the parking lot.
179.
You see a little bit more of that parking space. The orange circles indicate some of the shell cases that were found. There's also some orange markers laying on the ground next to some of the other pistol casings that were found there.
186.
Excuse me. We can see the orange marks, the orange circles, and orange markers laying on the ground indicating the shell casings that were found in the parking space.
$216.
That is the AR-15 rifle that was collected from Officer Oliver that night. I'm sorry, it was collected from Chief Haber that night.
But it's the defendant's rifle.
Correct.
Did you bring that with you here today?
I did.
217.
That is photograph of Officer Oliver that morning.
And you took that?
Correct.
218.
That's the right side view of Officer Oliver.
Why do you take the picture from the side and from the front?
I have a standard, anytime I'm photographing a person, I have a standard set of images that I'm going to take to start off with.
219.
That's a close-up front view of Officer Oliver.
And 220.
It's Officer Gross.
All right. And that's all the photographs. I wonder if we could have the lights, please, sir. And Judge, can you confirm that the rifle is safe for the jury?
We did, and the bailiff checked it, it is safe. Go ahead, Mr. Sykes.
And can you go ahead and take out State's Exhibit 229? And can the witness show that to the jury, Judge?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
That MC5 carbine rifle, is that a deadly weapon, sir?
Yes, sir.
You indicated that you collected 4 fired shell casings from the rifle, is that right, sir?
Yes, sir.
And do you have those there in front of you?
I do.
Okay, can you show those to the jury?
Can you remind me what exhibit numbers those are, sir?
Those are going to be 230 through 233. And Detective, are those all the same, 230 through 233?
Essentially, yes, sir.
I mean, they're different casings, but they're the same kind.
Same caliber. Yes, sir.
All you got to do is show them one. And then, did you collect 12 casings from the parking lot?
I did, sir.
And that's going to be exhibits 234 through 245. Did you bring them today?
I did, sir.
All right, you can show one of those to the jury. you also collect the defendant's magazine?
I did, sir.
And if you could show the jury State's Exhibit 282. In that bag that you have there, is there a live round in there?
Yes, sir.
And that's State's Exhibit 283. Can you take that out? Your Honor, with your permission, if we could give that to the jury and let them pass it around.
Go ahead.
And that's a round that would have been fired from that MC5 carbine rifle?
Correct.
Detective, did you also make a variety of sketches and diagrams while you were from your examination of the scene out there?
I did, sir.
You want to go ahead and take your seat now? Did you also diagram the 2004 Chevrolet Impala?
I did, sir.
So I saw you right up there, would you mind putting that casing back a little more? They're finishing. So would you mind putting that magazine back in the envelope?
Showing you what's marked as State's Exhibit 221 for identification purposes. Do you recognize that?
I do, sir. It's one of the sketches that I made.
And with Bishop, Barron, and Shepard in it?
Correct.
We offer 221, Judge.
I'd like to see it. No further objections than what we already have, Judge.
Do you recall those objections? They're overruled. 221 is admitted for all purposes. You may cover.
State's Exhibit 222, do you recognize that?
I do, sir. It's one of the other sketches that I made showing the relationship between Barron Drive, Bishop Drive, and Shepherd Lane.
223,
This is the close-up image, close-up sketch, I'm sorry, that I made of the vehicle on Bishop.
224,
This is another close-up sketch I made showing the bullet defects that are found on the car.
225,
This was a sketch that I made to show the pathing of the vehicle, officers Gross and Oliver.
226,
This was a sketch that I made depicting where the shell casings were found, both rifle casings and pistol casings.
227,
This is a sketch I made showing the location of the rifle casings that were found.
and 228.
And this is a sketch I made of the pistol casings.
And we offer 222 through 228, Judge.
Can I take witness on board, Your Honor?
Sure.
Detective, it's important to be detailed in your job, is it not?
Correct.
Why is that important?
Well, obvious reasons for court. We want to make sure we document everything correctly and fairly.
What happens if it's not documented fairly and accurately?
Mistakes can be made.
You took pictures of telephone poles, why?
We often use those as reference points in our sketches. So they have numbers on the side of them. If you give those numbers to the telephone company, they can tell you exactly where that pole is located. So those make good reference points for sketches, for making measurements and such.
Do you have your field notes to back up these diagrams?
I don't have them with me, sir.
That'd be an important detail to check stuff with, correct?
Yes, sir.
When did you make 226?
I don't know the exact date.
What, yesterday, wasn't it?
No, sir.
In fact, your department was gracious enough to give Officer Oliver and our team copies of all this in advance, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you know when you made 228?
I don't remember the exact dates on any of this, sir.
And all your measurements are based off a telephone pole number, correct?
Correct.
So if the telephone pole number in 226 and 228 is wrong, then it's leaving a false impression in front of the jury as to where all the measurements came from. Is that correct?
Well, my measurements were based off the telephone pole.
That wasn't my question. You said you're based off of, in your field notes, because I've looked at them, your notes are off telephone pole numbers that you don't have here today with you to support your testimony, but if the numbers are wrong on the diagram, then it's not a fair depiction of what you're trying to convey. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
We'd object to 226 and 228, Your Honor, for purposes we just laid forth. 220, 225, we knew or Garrity in that line of objections there, Your Honor.
Your objections to 226 and 228 are overruled, and 3 goes to the way, not the admissibility. 225 is also overruled. I give you your own objections to all.
Have we published those exhibits, Judge?
You may. Thank you, Mr. Brissett.
Yeah, 221. This is State's Exhibit 221. Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what we're looking at there?
You see the location there on Barron Drive. Those boxes are indicating the houses. The one that highlighted yellow in Barron indicated the house where the party was at. We see the green circle. That's indicating the area where the 223 shell cases were found. You see the large odd-shaped structure on the right side with the purple circle in front of that is the nursing home. The purple circle represents the area where we found all the pistol casings. And then we see down at the bottom of the sketch, Bishop Drive, that's where the car was found. And those 2 yellow boxes there indicate the houses in which the car was in front of.
Publishing 222. What is that?
Basically, it's just a larger image of what we just saw. You can see the Ambassador Way and get a better idea of the area.
223.
I mean, a close-up view of where the car was on Bishop Drive. We have the black and orange colored rectangles there indicating the 2 of the cell phones that were outside the car.
224.
That is an image of the car. We see on the top, we see a top view image of the vehicle. On the bottom, we see a view of the right side of the vehicle depicting the bullet defects that were found on the vehicle.
Okay. And D2 and D1, that's the first round that was fired?
Yes, sir.
And D2 is the second round? I mean D3?
D3.
And D4, the third round, D5, the fourth round?
Correct.
You were unable to find a fifth round initially, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And does that indicate the direction that those rounds were fired from?
Approximately.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what that is?
D2 ends up being an entrance defect that corresponds to D1 being the exit. D3 is an entrance defect that entered into the front passenger window. D4 is an entrance defect that entered into the door frame in between the front and rear doors. D5 is an entrance defect that entered into the right side rear door.
Could those rounds potentially have hit someone in the back seat of that car?
D5 terminated inside the door and never entered into the cabin. D4 terminated at that B pillar and never entered into the vehicle. As indicated, D2 entered in and exited at D1, didn't strike anybody. D3 is the only round that could have struck somebody.
Could that D3 have struck Jordan Edwards in the back of the head, sir?
Yes, sir.
225. What do you have there?
This is a sketch depicting the pathing of the vehicle, officers Gross and Alper.
Okay. And what color is the defendant's path?
He's going to be the pinkish purple color.
And Officer Gross' path?
It is the green color
And the 2004 Chevrolet Impala?
with blue.
226.
We see the close-up shot kind of a nursing home. This shows where the shell casings, all the pistol shell casings were found, and in the purple oval shape. And the green circle indicates where the rifle shell casings were found.
227.
This is an indication of the approximate location of where all the rifle shell casings were found.
228.
This indicates the location of where all the pistol cases were found in the nursing home parking lot.
What time did you clear the area initially, Detective?
For the report, I left the scene at about 6:58 a.m. That with the record to Louis-Sterrett with the vehicle.
Did you meet back at the sheriff's department?
Yes.
What was the purpose of that?
We hadn't had a chance to discuss any findings with our CID, our investigators, and they hadn't had a chance to discuss with us. So this gave us an opportunity to sit down and discuss with each other what we had found, and also we finally got a chance to review the body cam footage.
Did you ever go back out there with a metal detector?
Yes, sir.
What was the purpose of that?
It had been determined that a fifth shot had been fired
How was that determined?
through Grant Fredericks and video forensic analysis. When he slowed down the video, you could definitely hear 5 shots being fired on the video. At that point, we went back out to look to use a metal detector sweep to try to find if there was another round out there.
Could that possibly have been May the 3rd as opposed to what you just said about Grant Fredericks?
I believe it was. Let me double check.
Well before Mr. Fredericks was involved in the case?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you went out there 4 days after this event took place to look for that 5th shot, is that right?
Correct.
Have just a second. Sure. With pass witness.
Cross-examination.
Thank you. Detective, what is your ID or call sign in your unit?
My call sign on the radio is 344.
Is it common in the Dallas County Sheriff's Department for an officer-involved shooting to have the sheriff herself emailed at 12:16 in the morning about you going out to a scene?
I believe it's standard operating procedure for the radio room to notify all administrative staff about any major event.
And you were dispatched, if I understand the dispatch from Station 5, the position in the radio room. Balch Springs PD requested physical evidence section BES
Correct.
for an officer-involved shooting at Bishop and Shepherd. responding units PES 344 and CID 308.
Yes, sir.
Were you conducting a criminal investigation or an officer involved shooting, figuring out what's going on investigation?
At the time, we were just trying to figure out what was going on.
And that was your entire time while you were out there at the scene that morning until the sun came up, isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
Because you've assisted, as you said on direct, Balch Springs for a number of years during your duty as a crime scene officer. Everybody helps each other when they need some help, is that correct?
Correct.
And if Balch Springs didn't have a minister on staff, the sheriff has a minister as a deputy, is that correct?
Yes, sir, they do.
And when you email the entire command staff from the then sheriff to the now sheriff to everybody else and let them know what's going on, that's so you can bring all the resources you need to bear for the citizens of Dallas County to figure out what's going on. Is that a fair statement?
I would say so, yes.
When you get to a scene like this, helping another agency out figure out their internal investigation as to what's going on, do you have to take command of the crime scene, for lack of a better term? At some point, the scene has to become yours, does it not?
Correct.
And do you get a briefing or a handoff for that?
No, sir, nothing official like that. Just
Is there what's commonly known as a sheet officer in the industry?
usually someone keep maintaining some sort of crime scene log. Yes.
And would you have to check in with the sheet officer or the crime scene officer to enter these crime scenes?
Yes, sir.
And ultimately, who takes the crime scene log when it's done?
Usually CID.
And have you seen 2 crime scene logs in this case?
I've not seen a crime scene log.
Did you have to sign in on one?
I believe the officer signed me in.
Do you remember checking in? Is that at Barron or Bishop that you signed in?
We viewed it as one crime scene. So there was one sign in.
So one crime scene, but 2 distinctively different areas. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
2 different sets of yellow tape. You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Different personnel at different scenes, yes?
Yes, sir.
Did you do any, between the 2 crime scenes then, or the 2 areas of an issue, did you do any steps to decontaminate or make sure you didn't cross-contaminate anything from one scene to another?
Yes, sir.
And what steps did you do for that?
I changed gloves and made sure I didn't get infected by any blood or anything like that.
Okay. So what time approximately did it start raining that night while you were out there?
It had started raining just before I left the vehicle, just before I got up to the Barron Drive and Shepherd area.
In your business, do they have, what are, lack of a better term, crime scene markers?
I'm sorry, just,
Do you have an alphabet set of crime scene markers in your bag of tricks?
I did not at the time.
Is that not a standard issue for crime scene officers of your seniority?
We have them in our main crime scene van. Unfortunately, our van was not there that night. I was operating out of my take-home vehicle.
Is your take-home vehicle the black Dodge pickup we see on the next day back at the nursing home?
Yes, sir.
Prior to the rain coming, did you have any file folders or anything that you could, there's training in the crime scene world to take a file folder and cut it and use those as a tent to mark stuff so we know exactly which one was A, B, C, D, E?
I did not. I used the orange markers.
How about for the telephones and stuff like that? Any markers to indicate any of those so we know exactly which ones were on which side of the vehicles?
I took photographs of them.
So if we have 2 identical iPhones or 2 identical Androids, how do we know without getting a microscope out to look at a photo which one's which?
I'm not sure, sir.
And that's the purpose, and I understand your vehicle was broken, but that's the purpose of having the alphabet or the crime scene markers out there that are weatherproof so you can identify objects of interest that you want to collect.
Correct.
because it's important to note and document and follow your general orders. Yes?
Yes,
Is it safe to say then, since you were in your take-home vehicle, is that a county-issued vehicle?
it is.
Did you have the lead sheet or the lead marker card that would have like a Macbeth color chart on it, so you could note what we were looking at for the series of photos downstream that's required in your general orders?
We have the photos indicating the position, took multiple photos from multiple different angles, and we have the sketches.
Does your general orders require you to use a placement card to start off at any series of photos indicating the date, time, and location of photos taken?
Yes, sir.
Did you do that in this case?
I did not.
And is it safe to say consistently for all your investigative work on this case, from your original dispatch, where everybody in command staff was notified, through your time in processing the vehicle over in the stockyards barn, that none of those cards were used to indicate date and time and location of photos? Is that correct?
That's correct.
The vehicle itself, when you got up to it, did you have an opinion or an observation as to whether or not the vehicle was still in the running position?
It was running.
Were you able, as part of your sketch that day or your notes, to show how much the odometer was reading on it?
No.
Would that be important to note if it was an accident or a case involving a motor vehicle, if you were to look at a vehicle?
I've never done accident investigation. I'm not familiar with it.
You've never shot any auto-ped cases at all in your time?
No, sir.
What level of peace officer certification do you have?
Advanced?
As part of your advanced class, you had to have an advanced crime scene class, correct?
No, sir.
To be an advanced peace officer, there wasn't an additional crime scene
There was
class?
an intermediate crime scene class that had to be taken to acquire the intermediate license. Once you had all the classes required for the intermediate license, then it's just a matter of time and training, miscellaneous training, and you acquire the advanced.
Does the Dallas County Sheriff's Department afford you the opportunity to take advanced training in your field of collecting physical evidence?
Occasionally.
During those occasions, have you ever had any training on photographing vehicles?
No, sir.
So how are you qualified to take pictures of this car today that's been admitted before the jury?
I've never had any training specifically about vehicles, about photographing vehicles. I've had training on photographs in general.
To your knowledge, do you have an accident investigation section inside the massive Dallas County Sheriff's Department?
We do.
And those are peace officers. They're peace officers, or are they unsworn?
They're peace officers.
So they're sworn Texas peace officers that have had advanced training in looking at the safety features of a vehicle, correct?
Yes, sir.
So if we needed to make sure that the brakes work properly on this 2004 Impala, they would have the resources and skill set to check the brakes.
I believe they do.
They would have the resources, skill, and knowledge to check the steering and suspension.
I believe so.
They would have the resources, knowledge, and training and understanding of how a 2004 Chevrolet suffers from a defect with a front-wheel drive called torque steer, where it jerks to the left when you punch the gas.
I assume so.
You know if any of that was done?
Not to my knowledge.
Because if anybody wanted to look at that vehicle to keep the chain of custody of the vehicle, because y'all still have it,
Correct.
you would be invited to the party, I would assume.
Yes, sir.
And that's only because we got to keep everything straight so people like this can grade our paperwork. You'd agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Why did y'all get a search warrant for that vehicle?
We didn't, the vehicle that was just a standard issue to kind of cover our bases, to make sure that everything was done properly.
What crime, because you have to have a crime for a search warrant, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's not Mr. Oliver's vehicle.
Correct.
What crime did the driver of that vehicle commit in order to get a search warrant to search the vehicle?
No crime.
So you just got a search warrant for no reason?
CID got the search warrant?
And in addition, you got a second search warrant later on to go back and look at it with Rudy Flores and Nick and his crew, correct?
Correct, sir.
You're aware of what crimes might have been on that one?
No crimes against the owner of the vehicle.
Why? Okay, the owner is, I think, Vidal and Jordan, and it's their father. Okay, he wasn't there that night, right?
Correct.
Would it be that you got a search warrant because the allegation from Balch Springs when you were given the case was that the driver failed to stop when he was asked to by a peace officer and invaded in a motor vehicle?
That possibly could be the reason.
That would be a felony offense that one would need a warrant for.
Yes.
Okay. When you get done processing the car, you have the crash wrap go on it. I know you've talked about processing vehicles as in photographs and others. Have you had experience in your career as a crime scene officer in processing glass or soft subjects like that, and how to preserve projectile or possible projectile holes for further examination?
Yes.
What steps did you take to keep that right front passenger door glass intact?
The crash wrap.
Did you apply any clear wrap that would be consistent with national training to the inside to preserve everything so it doesn't fall apart as it's being loaded on the wrecker and taken to loose derrick?
No, sir.
When you got the vehicle to loose derrick, what steps did you take to protect it there?
We had it roped off, clearly marked, and used crash wrap.
And the Sally Port is an area in a jail where the agencies, any law enforcement agency with proper credentials, can bring somebody in that's under arrest, safely bring them into the jail where it's in a secure area, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's under 24-hour access with cameras and access. You just can't, despite how the media sometimes gets down there when people are brought in, it's a secure area. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
And to your knowledge, the media wasn't in during any of that time that you were looking at the vehicles?
Correct.
You had an opportunity, if this is Saturday night into Sunday morning, at some point you get to go home and go to sleep for a little bit, correct?
Correct, sir.
Because if I understand your direct testimony, you're a Monday through Friday team of the 5 individuals that make up this detectives bureau that does crime scene. Is that correct?
Yes, we work 10-hour shifts. So, like me personally, I work Tuesday through Friday.
Did you come in on your day off then on Monday?
No, sir. Well, I have to look at the calendar. I'm not sure what day of the week it was.
Well, if the 30th is Sunday of April, then May Day, May 1st, would have been Monday.
Correct.
Tuesday would have been the 2nd. Do you recall when you were given the go-ahead from the Criminal Investigations Division to process that vehicle in the Sally Port?
I believe that was on May 2nd.
And let's stick to the vehicle here for a second. When you process the vehicle, whether it's the 1st, the 2nd, or the 3rd, it's that week. It's a short time, correct?
Correct.
Because at some point, the commander of the jail is going to want his parking spot back. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
How do you go about processing a vehicle when it's in a controlled environment such as the Sally Port?
When we roped it off, we took precautions to have more than just the parking space that we needed. And then, so we had some space to work in.
Do you take a set of scene photos to show the wrap was still in place?
Yes.
After you take the crash wrap off, then do you take another set of photos to document it?
Absolutely.
And then you began your examination of the interior portions of the vehicle, because the search warrant allows you to go into any part of it, correct?
Correct.
And what did can you explain to the members of the jury what you did there?
We first started by examining the trunk, photographing that, photographing the interior, exterior of the vehicle, and then we began to examine the individual bullet defects that we found.
And how does one go about looking at the individual bullet details or defects that are found?
Examining through photographs, conferring with other officers, and based on training and experience, previous experience of other shooting incidents, we start trying to make some conclusions.
Have you had advanced training in shooting reconstruction?
I have not.
Did the others that were there with you have any advanced training?
Not advanced training. We've had training in shooting reconstruction, but not advanced.
What type of training have you had in shooting reconstruction?
I've had 2 different basic shooting reconstruction classes.
And how long were those classes?
1 week, 40 hours.
Both were 40, so you have 80 hours?
Correct.
And were those tested classes?
Yes, sir.
And did you pass the test?
I did.
Okay. So with your basic understanding of that, is there not in the industry a way to set up 4 tripods around the vehicle and pull string to make a grid so you can start measuring angles of defect to see where shots may have come from on a vehicle?
It could be possible.
And was that done in this case?
No, sir.
Why not?
Because of the training that we've had, only having the basic training, we didn't feel comfortable doing that.
Dallas County, you agree, is a big county, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is there a big sister in the room, usually Dallas Police?
Yes, sir.
Anybody reach out to your fellow crime scene officers at DPD to see if they had the expertise in a shooting team to come over and do the reconstruction?
No, sir.
Up off of Northwest Highway in Harry Hines, there's a little area called the Federal Bureau of Investigation and all their team. You're familiar with that building?
I am.
You've been there before?
I have.
And they have, that's a regional field office, so it's massive over there, correct?
Yes.
Did you ask any of them for their assistance to lend members of their evidence response team to help with this?
We do not.
You're familiar with an area in Garland, Texas that houses the Company B headquarters for the Texas Rangers?
Yes, sir.
And they would have crime scene folks that are capable of doing reconstruction as well.
Yes, sir.
You're also aware that ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, has a field office here in Dallas for both explosives, bombs, but they have a firearms section.
Yes, sir.
And they have a firearms field section over in Fort Worth. To your knowledge, was anybody requested or assisted in that to come over and help you do these?
No, sir.
Were you able, in your observations that day with your crew, and who made up the crew in the exam there in the Sally Port? Which members of your team?
Sergeant Fassett, Detective Youngquist, Detective Randall, and myself.
All very capable individuals to make observations.
Yes, sir.
And when you have to make observations, you make observations. That's your job, is to depict it and capture it as best you can for members of the jury such as this, yes?
Correct.
Let's do a level set here. When we look at a door, the outside of the door skin's the sheet metal on the outside. The inside of the door, in olden days, that would be called the door card, the inside liner of the door. That's where your latch and your buttons for up and down and that type of stuff. Is that we use that, the door card on the inside of the door?
Yes, sir.
Did you take any of the door cards, did you take the door card off of the front right door?
No, sir. No, sir.
How about the back right door that has the window that appeared to be gone when you got there based on your photos that the state showed on direct?
We removed the interior door panel, but not the interior.
So if I understand, the door card's the interior part so you can see into the door on the back side of the outside sheet metal.
Right.
That a good level set for you and I?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. And I believe, if I recall your report right, that y'all used a special filter to vacuum out any glass that was in that back right door after taking the door card off on the inside. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
And is that special filter a coffee filter in line on the vacuum, or is there something more advanced at Dallas County?
It's essentially, that's what it is, but it's a special filter bought from a crime scene supplier.
Kind of like those $400 toilet seats for the military then, yes?
Correct.
Okay. Is part of that vacuuming of the door, are you the one that turned the ignition off at the scene and packaged the car?
No, sir. Sergeant Fassett did.
To your knowledge, Sergeant Fassett, based on everything you guys have worked together with and his years in crime scene, he didn't adjust any buttons in the car when he turned it off, just reached in and turned it off?
Correct.
Were you able to make any observations then on that back right door as to where the window track was at the time you had the door card off, as to was the window all the way up, or was it a 3/4, half, or all the way down position?
To me, it appeared that it was maybe this high up, about 3-4 inches.
So the window was up 3 to 4 inches?
approximately.
And did you make any, I think my question, and I apologize if it was badly worded, was any visual observations of the window mechanism itself, the gearing inside the door that would tell you definitively what position that window was in at the time it had suffered a defect?
No, sir.
As part of accident reconstruction or looking at a window in a vehicle, did you make any observations to the top gasket of that window on the back right side to notice if there were any shards of glass in the upper part of the track of how the door meets? Did the door have a metal frame on it?
Yes, sir.
Were you able to make any observations inside the gasket to see if there was any glass up there that caught your eye or attention that would, in a hypothetical situation, would say, hey, the window's up because there's glass here when it broke?
No, I didn't see any.
Did you look?
No, sir.
At some point in time for the shot sequence, you testified on direct when you were looking at the shots that there was a structural member between the front right door and the back right door. In the auto industry, if you know, do they call those pillars?
They do.
If we start on any vehicle for nomenclature, the windshield is the A pillar,
Correct.
and it goes back if it's a coupe. We don't have many. If it's coupe, C-O-U-P-E. Court reporter gave me a look. See? If we go all the way back on an SUV, it could go to D, E, and so on.
Yes, sir.
And that's how you document stuff.
Correct.
The B pillar is a very rigid piece of steel because it helps protect the car if it were to roll over. You understand that?
Yes.
What observations did you make if you removed anything from the inside of the B pillar?
That the round that went through there did not actually enter into the cabin area of the vehicle. It terminated at the B pillar.
How does one, in the industry of shooting reconstruction, from the classes you've tested on, your 80 hours, what are dowel rods used for?
They help for photographic reasons, determining, showing angle.
What do you mean by that, sir?
Showing angle of impact, what the angle was of the bullet when it struck the surface.
How would that correlate to a vehicle that was on a road with a crown?
You'd have to, those are other factors you'd have to take into consideration.
Are you a member of any professional association or organization, sir?
No, sir.
Have you ever heard of the Association of Firearms and Tool Marks Examiners?
No, sir.
Would there be a formula if there was a crown on the road? You're going to have to know the angle of the crown in order to do the math to be able to put all the lines back together to figure out where stuff came from.
Correct.
What's the crown on the road at Shepherd and Barron Drive?
I don't have that information, sir.
Were any measurements made of that?
Not by our department.
After Mr. Fredericks went out in September, were you out there when Mr. Fredericks was there?
I was not.
To your knowledge, anybody from the physical evidence section there in September?
No, sir. I had no idea that he had come out.
And you're the lead crime scene guy in this case.
Correct.
The degree on the road itself, the crown, you take that plus the angles if the strings were up, or if you had an angle or a protractor on the side of the vehicle, you could take that with the video and help get some estimations as to where some stuff is.
Correct.
The diagrams that First Assistant Snipe showed you about your observations that you charted on the vehicle itself, there is an entry, I believe an entry and an exit that you talk about on the vehicle itself, D2 to D1. Do you have an opinion on that, sir? Shot on your vehicle.
Yes, sir.
You remember using some alphabet?
Yes, sir.
All right, and the alphabet was used to indicate holes or deformations in the sheet metal or glass. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
Do you have an opinion of whether D2 to D1 is one shot?
I do.
All right, what is it?
I believe it was fired from one, well, both holes were made by one bullet.
All right, And help the members of the jury remember where D2 goes in at.
D2 is at the front right side of the windshield for entrance, and D1 would be the exit on the front left side of the windshield.
And if it's going across the dash like that, did you see any deformations of the actual dash pad on the inside of the glass?
No, sir.
Would you agree that D2 and D1 are almost in a straight parallel line to the front of that car?
Yes.
When, as a peace officer, how many times a year do you have to qualify at the range?
Twice a year.
Does the range master say ready, set, fire?
Something similar, yes, sir.
Upon the word fire, does the bullet instantaneously come out of the weapon?
No.
Is there a delay?
Well, it depends on when you pull the trigger.
Is there a delay when the range master asks you to stop?
Usually no.
Somebody says stop and it's an instantaneous stop of the muscle reaction on the hand?
Usually by the time they've yelled ceasefire, everyone has fired that particular course of fire.
Ever have any old heads that take a little bit longer, a little bit slower?
Yes, sir.
Sometimes those are going on after the fact, correct?
Well, usually they give them time, give them a little extra time.
Have you ever been involved in a shooting, sir?
No, sir.
If I could, I'd like to go back out to Barron and Shepherd with you on that Sunday morning after you come back to the office. Did y'all get something to eat before you went back out?
Yeah, I believe we did.
Now, y'all go back out to that nursing home. Had you searched, and I understand it was raining that night, had you searched the nursing home prior to clearing the scene with the wrecker to go to Lewis Derrick that morning?
No, sir, we did not search the parking lot.
When you went back out to that location, what plan or formulation did y'all have for a search to look for secondary evidence?
We had just got, from our discussions, we had got a better idea. We were centered around that nursing home where we were going to want to take a look. And we were just arriving when Detective Creer saw the shell casing. We hadn't actually even really started the search yet.
Is there a process or a way to divide up an area based on your testimony, one crime scene, but divide up this area into grids to do a grid pattern search?
Absolutely.
And was that part of any of the discussions to do an effective grid pattern search for the area involved?
We were going to discuss that once we arrived.
Did that discussion ever take place?
No, sir, because Detective Creer found the shell casing prior to us even beginning our search.
From what we've tragically learned here in this case, bullets come to rest at some point. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
And if we find empty shell casings, we're going to have projectiles that are missing somewhere. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
What efforts did the Dallas Sheriff's Department's personnel do to locate 12 projectiles dislodged and fired by those gang members over there?
We examined the front of the nursing home. We examined some of the buildings in those areas to see if there was any kind of defects or holes. We found none.
Did anybody use, at that time on Sunday afternoon, a metal detector to search any of the areas in and around if they were just shooting in the air? We get into Newton's Law where stuff's going to probably come right back down on them.
Yes, sir.
Any search like that?
No, sir.
Did the members of your unit or the detectives that were out there assisting you do any fog walks or foreign object debris walks in the parking lot looking for projectiles?
Yes, sir.
And tell me about that.
We just basically did a kind of a line search, and nothing else was found.
And for the members of the jury, a line search is when you see the news media, when the FBI is out there doing their big walk, or the Rangers, you get as many people as you need to walk a scene looking for projectiles.
Correct.
Where did y'all do your line walks?
Through the parking lot area, and then we also searched the roadway.
I apologize, Detective. There's a couple roadways, so the records.
Shepherd Lane.
Did anybody ever do a road walk down Barron?
No, sir.
Did anybody ever do a road walk down Bishop?
I'm sorry, sir. Let me back up.
Yes, sir.
Did a search down Barron that morning. When we came back, though, we did not do one.
Sticking on those searches and those walks, did anybody have an opportunity to, in today's age of technology, look for any CCTV or closed-circuit televisions either at the nursing home or, let's start just at the nursing home so I don't have a compound question. Any cameras outside looking out for nursing home?
We checked at the nursing home, and they did not have any.
How about any residents that were down Barron?
We did, and none were found.
Did you do the same type of detailed search on Bishop?
We did, and we didn't find any.
With respect to Bishop, you have a diagram that was admitted that has the path or the dots behind a vehicle. You remember that exhibit you prepared?
Yes, sir.
Does that, if Vidal Allen has told the jury that they drove around for a while, that's not indicative on the diagram, is that?
Correct.
Is there a reason why that wasn't added?
That pathing was based on statements received from officers and the body cam footage. Since that wasn't depicted on any of those statements or images, I did not show that.
Did you have an occasion to review prior to making your diagram the footage from Officer Chambly from the Balch Springs Police Department?
No, I did not.
Since you were conducting this internal shooting investigation for Balch Springs, would you have the occasion to be able to get any of their cameras or anything like that that you needed?
I've never conducted an internal investigation.
Well, you came over and assisted them. You said earlier on my cross that you were assisting them to figure out what happened on this police shooting.
Correct, on various crime scenes. But as far as like an internal affairs investigation, I've never.
Well, this didn't turn criminal that night, did it?
No, sir.
All right, so the night you're out there and that you testified, it's not a criminal investigation. You're just trying to figure out the answer to what happened.
What happened, right.
Did you go and ask for any additional cameras at different points in time?
We had asked for, I know the CID had asked for all the cameras.
And who would have collected those cameras? Did you?
No, sir. I believe Detective Carranza had collected all the camera footage.
Now, the physical evidence section, well, it'd be nice if they just called it crime scene, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
All right. So the physical evidence section of the Dallas County Sheriff's Department, y'all have forms when you collect stuff because it's kind of like the military. Everything's got to be accounted for. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
When did you come in contact with the Balch Springs police chief to collect the weapon that's up in that long gun box up there? Thank you, Your Honor.
5:11 a.m.
And do you recall where you collected it from?
We were in the parking lot of the nursing home.
And to your knowledge, do you know how the police chief came in possession of it?
What I was told is that he collected it from Officer Oliver.
Okay. At some point that morning, you go to the Balch Springs Police Department to take some photos, the as-is type photos of what the officers were wearing that night.
Correct.
If I understand your notes that I've read in detail prior to coming in here today, Officer Gross does his walkthrough prior to Officer Oliver at the scene with you.
Correct.
And if I recall correctly, Officer Gross' sidearm, his duty weapon, is collected along with the extra 3 magazines, I think, from him, and the live round in his chamber and the magazine in his chamber at Barron. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
Can you help me square up the photos then that Officer Gross has a sidearm on in his holster at the photos you take several hours later at Balch Springs?
I don't know exactly how that weapon, but typically, officer weapon is collected and he's issued a new weapon.
When you saw a new weapon on him there in the hallway, did you ask any questions to make sure you had the right one or if they had a backup weapon?
No, sir.
When you collected Officer Gross's weapon, when you were clearing it and went through the visual inspection of it to get a serial number off of it. It's a Glock, as I recall, correct?
Correct.
Does the Glock have a serial number on the bottom of the frame rail?
They do.
And you have to flip the gun over to make observations of that to record it.
The Glock has a serial number indicated in 3 different slots.
Which one did you use?
I used the one on the side of the frame.
Did you make any observations about Officer Gross's Glock as to any damage to it or defect?
I did not notice any at that moment.
Did you subsequently have any opportunities to look at a more thorough inspection of it when you, later on?
Yes, sir.
For the members of the jury's benefit, if the long gun box 229A that's been offered for the record, they make smaller versions of that for handguns that y'all use in your business, is that correct?
Yes, sir, they do.
And is the lead crime scene officer on this case, you would have packaged the weapons after you took photos of them?
Correct.
Did Officer Gross's weapon have a flashlight on it?
It did.
And do you have an opinion as to whether or not the flashlight extended beyond the frame rail, or was it even with the frame rail at the front?
I believe it's slightly extended beyond.
Any doubt that that was on when he was using it? It's mechanically bolted to it, is it not?
Yes.
They use set screws and it's on there where it doesn't come off.
Correct.
Did you make any observations as to the glass on the front of the flashlight to see if it had suffered any defect or damage?
I don't recall it being damaged.
Did you make any observations as to any defects to the front of the slide or the upper part of the block that Officer Gross had?
I don't recall any damage on the Glock.
No abrasions or anything like that?
Not on the Glock.
How did you come into possession of a video for the early morning hours of Sunday when y'all gathered back up? Your office is down on the ground floor of this building, correct?
Correct.
When y'all got back to your office that morning, how did you already have a copy of the video?
Detective Carranza had collected the body cam footage from Box Springs, and he had made copies.
Is there a process as part of your business on how you properly collect and process an SD card or a micro SD card?
If I'm doing it, yes.
Yes, what's the process?
I document it fully, what's exactly on that card. I have had occasion to even take screenshots of my computer screen so that we know exactly what's on that particular file.
Does the Dallas County Sheriff's Department have a computer forensics department?
No, they do not.
Have you ever heard of a write blocker as part of your education and training in collecting digital evidence?
No.
Are there ways to prevent the access or contamination of computer devices by putting a device in stream or in line to keep data from corrupting an SD card?
I'm not sure.
Did you have an occasion at some point to mark these, to look at these micro SD cards yourself?
No.
You're never...
I'm sorry, there was one SD card that we did look at in office.
And I believe, based on the notes you were gracious enough to provide me as part of discovery, that you did take the screenshots.
Yes, sir.
Do you make any markings on items when you collect them?
On the actual item, no, sir.
So how do you know one micro SD card from the other?
When I'm collecting it, it goes into some sort of bag, container, and that container is marked.
How do we mark shell casings to know which shell casing's which?
Same way. It's picked up, placed into a container, and that container is marked.
You don't put any marks or anything on the inside of the shell casing to prove that's the one you collected?
No, sir.
On those boxes that are there before you, are those the rounds from the nursing home, or are those the spent casings from Officer Oliver's weapon?
These four are the spent 223 shell casings.
So how do I know when I'm looking at those exhibits which one is on your diagram A, B, C, or D?
I've marked each box with A, B, C, and D.
Did you, originally when you picked those up after you shot your photos at the scene, did you have those boxes with you that night?
I did.
They go right in the box.
Correct.
The box is sealed so it can be used for identification purposes later.
Correct.
And you'd agree with me if there was, you have the capabilities in the crime scene world of known versus unknown comparisons.
Correct.
How about the exhibits that deal with the shell casings that you find over at the nursing home that Sunday morning when the sun's out?
I'm sorry.
You collected 12 casings at the nursing home, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is part of comparing unknowns, because you didn't have a suspect for that deadly conduct discharge, did you?
No.
And that would be a criminal offense in the state of Texas.
Yes, sir.
Jailable criminal offense.
Yes, sir.
How did you go about identifying and collecting those?
Again, used kind of a similar system. Took photographs, made a rough sketch of each one, labeled them on my sketch, and then picked up one at a time, placed them in the container, labeled the container with a corresponding number or letter.
And Dallas County has one of the premier crime labs at Swifts in the world, does it not?
I'm not sure what their rating is in the world, sir.
Well, let's hope they're pretty good. They're good in the state of Texas. You'd agree with that?
I think so.
Have a great reputation.
Yes, sir.
And the advancements since you started in the crime scene world in 2002 have come a long way with fingerprints and DNA. Would you agree with that?
I agree.
Nowadays, we're able to get fingerprints or DNA off of spent shell casings. You agree with that?
Sometimes, yes, sir.
That sometimes becomes impossible when they're covered in spray paint, correct?
It can be, yes, sir.
Who spray painted the shell casings out there?
Sergeant Fassett.
That's a no-no, is it not?
It's not ideal.
Well, let's just cut to the chase. Any chance of linking those shell casings up to the other capital murder case you know about that you did work on when you got your numbers report back, getting fingerprints from that is difficult, is it not?
Don't object to violation of my motion to leave.
Objection sustained.
You can't get any DNA off of that, can you, if it has spray paint on it?
I'm not a lab tech, so I don't know what they can and cannot do specifically.
Well, if we paint the walls like the county's doing out in the hallway here today, and we try to go back underneath the paint and swab it for DNA, that'd be a little difficult, wouldn't it?
I would imagine it might be difficult.
Same with trying to throw fingerprint dust or using super glue in the fish tank with the lid on it to raise prints in order to either do a lift or take a photo. That'd be a little difficult if it's got orange spray paint all over it, correct?
If it has orange paint, it might be, yes.
Well, let's switch from orange. We can put any color in there. Once somebody contaminates it like that, that's done for trying to figure out who may have discharged those, correct?
Probably.
And when I say that, it's who actually put the ammunition, the live cartridges, in a magazine and had to use their thumb to push down on each round.
Yes, sir.
As a magazine, if those on the jury have never had to load a magazine, as you get toward the top, as it gets to the capacity, it's harder to load, correct?
Correct.
And at the very end, it's very hard because you want to have a good spring in case you have to use it so the bullets go out in a timely fashion, correct?
Correct.
The actual locations of the shell casings for Officer Oliver's 223 rounds, the locations that were marked by your orange markers, that's where you found them when you came to process that area of your one large scene, correct?
Correct.
Ever seen a shell casing get stuck in an emergency vehicle's tires when they roll up on a scene?
Yes, sir.
Fluid scenes where casings are on a roadway can get moved around by cars going by at speed or other emergency vehicles going by speed, correct?
Absolutely.
So if one's not able to determine a firing position, if for lack of a better term, based on where the casings land on a curved roadway or in the grass, is that?
That's correct.
Your Honor. Her hearing aid went out. Can't hear anything.
It's all right. This is a perfect time for a lunch break. So if you would please mark your spot. Do you need a battery or something?
We do need a battery.
Sheriff, work on that over lunch break.
She has
Okay. Members of the jury, we're going to take our break. Please don't make any research and seek and discuss the case with anybody. All rise, please, jury. Thank you, Sheriff. You all may be seated. There's one matter I want to take up with all the lawyers. I'm going to be brief, and I'm going to be as succinct as I possibly can. And both sides now run right through a motion of limit. I don't want anybody to do that anymore. If that happens, we'll be in trouble. I'll make myself clear. If anybody's asking questions.
Yes, sir. And Judge, may I respond to that? The motion, well, if I could though, but the motion in limine yesterday was for the doctor, specifically with the doctor about the rest of that lab report. I don't believe there's one for any other part of that though.
You brought up the capital murder. I believe that was, of course, it can be part of the motion of limit. Whether it's actionable right now or not, it doesn't really matter. What I'm saying is, even if it's close in your mind, don't do it again. Is there anything else before we recess for the?
On the stage, Judge.
Thank you very much.
Judge, when do we come back?
1 o'clock. 1 o'clock.
No, yeah, I got to get it all done.